You know, there are two types of hate hoaxes that we cover on this channel from time to time, and it is very important for me to distinguish the one that we're going to talk about today from the UVA one that I covered only a couple of days ago, because in that specific case, you have a racial activist who was a racial activist since the age of 12, claiming that they're the victim of evil white racism, smearing Morgan Bettinger's name, attacking her, and the whole school rallying together in order to target and bully this one singular student. Then you have the university enabling this behavior, telling Bettinger that not only do they know that she's not guilty, but they're going to punish her anyway, and hopefully down the line at some point she gets some kind of resolution against the university that not only aided and abetted a hate hoax against her, the destruction of her reputation, supported the liar, but also violated her rights during the course of the process. Then there's the hate hoax like the one that we're going to talk about today, where somebody is so desperate to be a victim, somebody is so desperate for those oppression points and the money that goes along with it, that they end up proving the opposite point about our society, showing that people aren't actually that evil, are definitely not this large group of evil white racists, and then it's revealed to be a hoax, and you have this weird mixture of emotions. And that's what we're going to talk about today, because we had a story that's been years in the making of a black, gay-owned vegan food truck that was supposedly burned down by homophobic and racist vandals in the city of San Diego that was recently revealed to be a complete and utter hoax. But before we get into this food truck, I gotta talk about your diet and the sponsor, Keto with Justice. Celebrities are taking advantage of the hottest diet trend in 2023, and it's often called Keto 2.0. Keto 2.0 is essentially distilling the principles of the keto diet without all of the restrictions and all of the pitfalls associated with it. And one of the best ways that you could start your Keto 2.0 journey is by getting something to elevate your ketones, and I'm going to recommend this amazing powder over at Keto with Justice. There are 5 active ingredients in this that will help elevate your ketones. You take it once a day in the morning or twice a day if you're a go hard. Scoop it into a drink. It dissolves. It's amazing, and you feel the elevated ketones, the fat-burning energy, the quickening of the metabolism, and you're on your way to weight loss. Now, one of the great things about KetoWithJustice.com, and then why I absolutely love partnering with them, is that they offer you a 60-day money-back guarantee. So you could try this, use it all. If you're not satisfied, send it back for a full refund, and you get 51% off KetoWithJustice.com, and it supports the channel. And on top of all that, if you order today, you will get a PDF that will tell you the 14 most ketogenic foods, and we're offering our VIP fitness coaching for the rest of your life. Come on, KetoWithJustice.com. So the central figure of today's story is a man called Avante Hartsfield, and honestly, everything about this story really gets on my nerves because it seemed like everything was going in the direction of this man. He had large amounts of community support, and he had a great story himself of persevering and overcoming actual barriers in his life, that it's honestly just a shame that he had to make up, allegedly, these future barriers that he was dealing with. Because Hartsfield ended up starting his vegan food truck in the city of San Diego and immediately got positive media coverage.
A business owner is getting back to his roots by whipping up some good food and giving back at the same time. In a story that is positively San Diego, I want to introduce you to a local man who, despite the many challenges he has faced himself during this pandemic, is still determined to make sure others don't go hungry.
Avante Hartsfield knows how to cook up a storm. He worked in food industry jobs for 10 years, doing just about everything. Then it was time for a change.
And I just decided that I wanted to do my own thing finally. And so I started very small at the farmer's market.
And just as business started to sizzle, enough to think about opening a restaurant, the pandemic hit and farmers markets were shut down. To roll with the punches, Avante opened this last fall, the Rollin Roots food truck.
I took the orders, I made the food, I went and bought the food.
So back in 2021, Avante, like many people who are not politically connected to the governor's mansion or to local Democratic politicians, was suffering the negative consequences imposed by government on the market, and specifically disproportionately affected and impacted small business owners. He almost lost his food truck, which was really unfortunate because he had poured his life savings into this project, and he ultimately ended up being successful up until the point when the pandemic struck.
In the morning, I prepped the food in the morning. I did every single thing.
But still, pandemic restrictions had him on the verge of going under until an Instagram post helped revive business. And through it all, Avante has donated meals to those in need. And not just any meals. His specialty is vegan cooking, born after he tasted vegan food already out there.
It wasn't that good. It didn't have that much flavor to it, or it had too much salt. So I decided I needed to step into this and make it my own.
He says it's allergy friendly and healthy. But don't call it health food because you can get fries too.
However, after a social media post, which honestly, this might have been the thing that gave him the bug that inspired him to go forward, the community ended up rallying around his business. They ended up ordering from him, and he was able to not only stay afloat, but to thrive in the later stages of the pandemic, despite the fact that California was one of the more restricted states. And in response to the community responding to him, Avante did something that we don't see a lot from business owners or individuals, and he essentially instituted some systems in order to help out people who are also struggling during the course of the pandemic, because he was struggling at one point in time in his life. He was homeless, so he decided to set aside a certain amount of hot meals, which were in containers, free to take for those in need throughout the course of every day. It was his way of essentially paying back the community that rallied around and supported him.
He says he donates 20 to 50 meals a day in warmers for the taking, and that's not all.
Every single day, there was always an option that you could come and just pay whatever you can.
And he plans to start a pay it forward program so customers can help too.
Why is it important to you to do something for your community?
I grew up knowing what it was like to feel hunger and not being able to know where your next meal is coming from. I'm on hyper drive mode, trying to figure out how I can do more. You can love someone from a distance. You can smile. You can go that extra mile to make someone's day brighter and bring the community a little bit closer.
Again, it's a heartwarming story. On top of that, certain people had a little bit of money, maybe weren't comfortable accepting something for free, so he ended up instituting a system where throughout the day, at certain periods of time, you could come and pay whatever you can and get something from him in terms of food, and he would be all right with that. So by all accounts, at this point in time, Avante is an absolutely great guy, not just a good guy, a stellar human being. That's how he was operating his business during the course of the pandemic.
What do you guys got?
So that's free food. We got a buffalo chicken sandwich.
No cost to the people who walk by Avante's dark truck. Instead, a little bit of light to help them through the day.
Enjoy. It's just something that I feel I need to do, or somebody needs to do it.
Now, because Avante was getting a lot of positive press coverage, first because, let's be honest, he was a black gay entrepreneur who was working with vegan food, which is not typical amongst food in terms of the black community, and because of his actions, which were no doubt honorable during the course of the pandemic. All of a sudden, we started to get some reports from Avante of some negative backlash that his food truck was getting. And this was really problematic because even though he was expanding into other areas, other avenues of business was booming, the food truck was by far and away his most profitable operation. Now, all of this seemed to come to a head shortly after some of those segments that I showed you earlier, when Avante ended up suffering from an arson attack against his food truck.
The smile you see on this man's face is a smile that touches our community. Avante Hartsfield is the owner of the Rollin Roots food truck. Rollin Roots became a staple here in San Diego. It's not only the delicious food that everyone loves, but it's also his infectious spirit and joy of life he brings to the people he serves. When Hartsfield didn't think his business would survive the lockdowns, he realized he wasn't the only one suffering. He offered a pay-what-you-can system and gave back to those who needed him most.
Now again, you could just tell by that introduction to this segment related to the arson that Hartsfield was somebody who was integral in the community, and you could also see that this local news reporter had actually covered his food truck before. By the way, this is a different local news story, so this guy was getting a lot of positive press coverage during the course of the pandemic and from when his truck opened. And by the way, also, by all accounts, his vegan food was supposedly top-notch, so he had that going for him. But what we're actually seeing here is insurance fraud, because this is ultimately what Hartsfield would end up being indicted for later. And again, it's still alleged at this moment, but they got a pretty good idea that this guy is the person behind it, and it's just tragic to see as you're watching and seeing all these smiling photos and hearing about all the good things that this man did and how successful he was before this attempted insurance fraud. However, things are unfortunately going to get worse.
At the end of September, the Rollin Roots food truck fell victim to vandalism, and over this past weekend, Hartsfield's everything was burned to the ground.
This is my life's work, really. It's my life savings. I started this business with everything that I had, so it's looking at it being gone. It's just, it's devastating. Again, I can't really describe the feeling, but it's the most sad feeling that I've ever felt, just because I built it myself from scratch. I came here. I used to sleep in the office when I first started the business and prep the food and get everything done and make it happen and make it work. And just to see it all gone after coming so far and being so supported by the community, it's definitely a terrible thing for me to be feeling right now.
Hartsfield posted on social media asking the community for help. He says, quote, "I've put my life savings into this business and I haven't received any loans or assistance, so this is literally all I have. The food truck was our biggest profit maker and now it's gone," end quote. If you would like to see Rollin Roots roll around town once again, a GoFundMe has been made to help rebuild his business.
Now, as you heard by the end of the segment, there was about $50,000 in a GoFundMe for Avante Hartsfield in order to rebuild based on the sympathy generated from his Instagram posts. And we ultimately ended up finding that he raised about $100,000 total from people with kind and generous hearts, and $20,000 in this one specific donation that I want to highlight because it has a big check, and again, it was featured yet again on the local news.
On behalf of Saquon Band and Command Nation, we want to present you with a check for $20,000. Hopefully that'll get you to your goal.
A generous donation presented to Rollin Roots food truck owner Avante Hartsfield.
This was definitely unexpected, so I can't even say how thankful I am for it.
This donation adds to the growing sum of money Avante has collected on GoFundMe, which is at $83,000 as of Thursday afternoon.
With this and the GoFundMe, I think might be able to purchase something outright, hopefully pretty soon.
Now, this is where I get kind of upset, because you have people donating their hard-earned money. You have the local news rallying around this guy, advertising his next restauranting venture, which he promoted on his Instagram.
He opened another location in Miramar about 4 months ago. Here, Avante shares the restaurant and bar with Lost Cause Meadery and Serpentine Cider.
It's one bar, kind of curved. They serve the drinks, and then we make food in the kitchen.
And Avante recently signed a lease here at another location downtown that will eventually be a pizzeria and shared kitchen for other small businesses.
And it just goes to show you that America, again, is not full of all of these evil white racists, homophobes who hate black people, who hate gays, but especially who hate black people who happen to be a member of the gays. It's actually full of kind-hearted people that don't want somebody who's honestly out there and hardworking to fail, but unfortunately it appears that among the many things that Avante Hartsfield hid from the population that was donating money to him is that he actually had insurance on the food truck, and this appears to be an insurance/GoFundMe fraud scheme, and this is ultimately what he ended up being indicted for.
Prosecutors say the 26-year-old businessman is accused of intentionally setting fire to his food truck business and then raising more than $100,000 in donations from it.
So first of all, I have to point it out because I know that some of you out there already know, and some of you will be angry at me for pointing it out, but that is an absolutely stunning jacket on this local news anchor. No comments on her appearance. How dare you people?
More than a year after Avante Hartsfield's Rollin Roots food truck caught fire, the small business owner is now facing arson and fraud allegations. According to a criminal complaint filed against him, the popular San Diego businessman is accused of maliciously setting fire to the truck and then scamming more than 2,000 people who donated to help his business bounce back. This is CBS 8 video of Hartsfield last year following the fire and vandalism at his other business that he was preparing to open as a pizzeria, which he claims had its windows smashed and had been vandalized with graffiti. At the time, he called it a series series of hate crimes directed at him and his business.
Now, as you can see, one of the ways that this guy ultimately ended up getting caught, first and foremost, setting a fire for insurance fraud purposes and then soliciting donations without telling people that you have any insurance at all, is one of those big red flags, and the San Diego fire inspectors are likely going to figure out it was you. But also the fact that this guy ended up increasing and trying to maximize his victimization by not only having the business in terms of the food truck, which he was featured very prominently for, be targeted by the supposed racist, homophobic hate crimers, but he also ended up having his business in terms of the brick and mortar location being attacked by the same homophobic and racist kind of people. And this is one of the things that people overlook whenever you're trying to examine whether or not a hate crime is legitimate or not, and that is people are often way more obsessed with their identity than other people are. So while it could be possible for somebody to not like somebody of a particular race that happens to own a food truck or sexual orientation and thus strike out against that specific food truck, it's weirdly obsessive to be so angry at the individual based on their race and sexual orientation that you would follow them around through their various businesses in order to vandalize them just to tell them that you don't like the fact that they are gay and or black and or both. This is very important to remember, especially when you think back to the Jussie Smollett incident, where Jussie was saying that his attackers, which he was saying were white people way back when, yelled out, "Hey, Empire," which was the show that he was on, F-slur, which is a slur for gay people because Jussie's also gay, and then the N-word because Jussie is also a black person, before striking him.
I heard, as I was crossing the intersection, I heard Empire. I don't answer to Empire. My name ain't Empire. And I didn't answer. I kept walking, and then I heard Empire. So I turned around and I said, "Did you just say to me?"
Usually people aren't going to identify Jussie Smollett by his person and then attack him because of his orientation and because of his race and because of the show that he was on during a polar vortex. Usually a racial attack is just that, a racial attack. Or if you're looking a little bit in the gays category, it's just that, an attack because you're gay. The problem here, which should have made it obvious to everyone, was that this was far too specific. Again, you would think that the people who are behind this would have had to have had been watching all the local news segments, Googling this guy's name, figuring out all his different various ventures, and targeting him over and over again repeatedly. That's too much obsessive behavior and would lean more into not being a hate crime or an anti-gays crime, but into a personal vendetta against him, and that should narrow down the suspects even further. However, in reality, we're talking about San Diego. It's one of the more accepting, chill places in the entire country. So the idea that in San Diego you're going to have all these anti-black, anti-gays people in the same area that 2,000 people donated money to this black gay person doesn't make a lot of sense, especially one that's this obsessive. The only person this obsessed with Avante appears to be Avante.
The office stole a small safety deposit box.
We later covered the outpouring of community support that followed, including when Sequan tribal officials donated $20,000.
Sequan has found a perfect opportunity to step in and help support him to get back on his feet.
In a statement following the allegations against him, Tribal Chairman Cody Martinez says, quote, "This is a very distressing and unfortunate turn of events. We believe in the bedrock principle of innocent until proven guilty. However, if guilty, we will be very disappointed by his betrayal of our trust and evaluate our options for recovery."
I just realized that the guys that donated the $20,000 to him were Native Americans. The guy robbed Native Americans. He just pulled a colonialism. Oh my God, I can't believe he jacked the Native Americans for $20,000 with a straight face. He didn't feel a little bit ashamed. He didn't say, "You know what, guys, you probably should donate that to a better cause." He was like, no, give me that Native American money. I deserve it. It's not like anything bad has ever happened to you in history.
Hartsfield raised more than $102,000 in GoFundMe donations from local San Diegans and others, including one donor who wrote, quote, "I hope you will come back stronger than ever." And this person who wrote, quote, "News of what happened to the Rollin Roots food truck sickens me. I don't want to live in a community where violent and racist acts are tolerated." Even the GoFundMe team donated $750.
That's probably the best distillation of the reality of people versus what was concocted, allegedly, by the owner of this food truck. The reality of these people in this area and in this country is if they hear you're being targeted, your business and your history of doing good is being undermined based on your identity, they flood you with donations. They cheer you on, they support you, because they don't want to live or want you to even feel like you live in a place where the majority of opinion is that way. And it turns out it's not that way. It turns out even these isolated instances oftentimes have to be manufactured because ultimately we've created a society that embraces victimhood and condemns skepticism, so much so that the Native Americans gave $20,000 to this guy, and it turns out he just scammed them.
In an update to his GoFundMe account in March, Hartsfield told supporters that the investigation into the fire had shown it was caused due to an electrical mishap and had offered to refund the money raised. Hartsfield recently moved his business to LA, but had recently announced on his social media account that he would be back in San Diego to serve meals for Thanksgiving.
Now, what's interesting about this is as the investigation was rolling on, Hartsfield ended up going with the explanation that it totally was not arson, and that you should pay no attention to the fact that I labeled it a hate crime, even though I have graffiti and other vandalism at my other locations, the brick and mortar locations, that were also meant to coincide with this, thus making them all seem like a hate crime. So at some point in time, he actually did offer people their money back. I'm assuming very few people took that option in order to take their money back, but I find it quite interesting that he was backpedaling before, even though the news that he was going to be arrested didn't actually come down the pike, and he's moved his business to LA. And again, the whole situation is incredibly unfortunate because what you found was that there were really good people here who wanted to help somebody who they thought was a victim, and it turns out that all of that show, all of that muster for him to be this great pillar of the community was fraudulent. Now look, I don't want to keep beating this dead horse, so I'm going to say that's all I really have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. If you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about a potential hate hoax, still alleged, still not convicted. Till next time.